Hello, everyone, and welcome to Clarity at Speed Live. Thank you all for joining. There's still quite a few people coming through. Today is all about giving you the most bite-sized and actionable insight from the smartest minds in digital startups and workplace culture. My name is Nathan, and along with a few other people from Journey Further, we'll be trying to guide you through today. We have a cracking lineup, 15 talks in total. Each talk will last just 15 minutes each, and I'll be pressing each speaker for their 15-second summary of the one thing you can take away from each talk. Later on today, we have the likes of Seth Godin, Bruce Daisley, we have Anne Bowden from Starling, we have speakers from Bloom and Wild, Beauty Stack, and many, many more. But to kick things off, I'm excited to welcome our Managing Director at Journey Further, Matt Kafir-Chinsky, to give us a little bit more insight into what we mean when we talk about clarity at speed. How are you doing, Matt?
All good, thanks, Nate.
Fantastic. Right, over to you.
So, welcome everybody. I want to start by asking a question. What's a question that's intrigued me for a while? Why do so many people read self-help books, but so few act on the advice given? I think it's the same reason why many business leaders understand the power of purpose, the importance of articulating why their businesses exist, but few act on that insight. Many business leaders have read the wise words of books, of words containing books like Simon Sinek's Start With Why or David Hyatt's Do Purpose. Books that do a fantastic job of substantiating the importance of identifying purpose. I believe that these books are read, but rarely acted upon as intended. And increasingly, some businesses do little more than replicate what I'm starting to consider a modern day standard. These businesses articulate a founder's story, a superficial story, a lightweight expression of why they exist. They then promise that if you buy a product from them, they'll plant a tree in the Amazon rainforest. Job done, we're purpose driven. Don't get me wrong, I'm certainly not against planting trees in the rainforest, but I find this approach rather hollow. In my opinion, it completely misses the point. The point is that the value associated with articulating why your business exists is only unlocked when you act accordingly. I've worked in the marketing industry for about 25 years, and for about 20 years of that, I worked for Omnicom. I've seen agencies spend hours and hours creating beautiful visual articulations of why they exist. They produce coffee table books that don't look out of place next to the latest copy of Vogue. These agencies would mention why they exist in pitches most weeks, but really do very little to ensure their proposition becomes a reality. Why? Why do I think this is? Why is it difficult to act according to your proposition, the reason why you exist? I can only think it's because it's hard work. It requires lots of effort each and every day, and because we're all human. I believe that people don't act according to identified propositions because they're looking for security, not change. Security is comfortable and change is often difficult. They don't want to accept the state of things, the unpredictability of life. They therefore grasp onto concepts for security. To most, a proposition, the declaration of why business exists, is just another concept. It gives them and the people they are selling to a degree of security, justification for what they're doing, both selling and buying. But that's where they stop, with some fancy words in a pitch, on a page, on a website, a glossy coffee table book. They understand the concept, so they move on because this is the security that they were looking for in the first place. And by the way, prior to starting Journey Further, I used to be one of these people. I was once described quite accurately as being more like a lecturer than an MD. I was blinded by the superficial gloss I was creating. So what changed for me? Well, I believe I realized a very, very simple truth, that you need to do more than just articulate a few fancy words. You need to make every effort to act accordingly. You need to establish 3 core components to make a proposition a reality. First, you need a proposition that is deeply rooted in truth, a truth that resonates with you, your employees, your clients, and the industry. You then need values that help to inform how you should act. To help make our proposition, Journey Further's proposition, Clarity at Speed, a reality, we act according to 4 key values. We are open, we are immediate, we are pioneering, we are together. And last but not least, you need effort and day-to-day management to the values. You need to work really hard to try to ensure that the proposition is reflected in literally everything you do. So given this perspective, my personal point of view that we all need to work far harder to make deep-rooted business propositions a reality, I want to dig into our agency proposition to explain what Clarity at Speed is and how we leverage it to drive business success. I simply hope that this transparency will stimulate debate and help to create more proposition-led businesses, Journey Further included. So, what is Clarity at Speed? Well, it's just 3 words, but it's also the most powerful component of our agency. It's the reason we succeed, and it's the reason we fail. It's the past, it's the present, and it's the future. So Clarity at Speed, it's just 3 words, and it's the most powerful component of our agency. Why? Because it's the distillation of why we started the agency in the first place. From day one, we knew why we were creating this agency. We started Journey Further because we were frustrated with big agency life. We knew that most agencies were too bureaucratic, too slow, and lacked transparency. So in a professional way, we wanted to rebel. We wanted to challenge ourselves and the industry to take a different approach. And we believed we could be more open, more immediate, more pioneering, and more together than any other business. So in January 2017, Journey Further was born. So Clarity at Speed is the distillation of this story. It's our proposition, a declaration of why we exist. It's therefore a shorthand that exists and helps to keep our why, the reason we started the agency in the first place, square and center in the minds of those people that work at the agency. And what it then does is it helps to create a movement, not just an agency. About a year ago, there was a moment that really made me smile. I got wind of the fact that through a colleague that a competitor, well, somebody at a competitor agency, had called Journey Further a cult. Now, by definition, a cult is a system of religious veneration, a devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. And just to set the record straight, we're not a cult. So why did this expression make me smile? Well, because somebody outside the agency was recognizing just how strong our belief system is. They were trying to criticize what we were doing, but they were instead unwittingly reinforcing the fact that we've got something really special here. A team marching in the same direction, focused on the same proposition. Clarity at Speed, it's the reason we succeed, and it's the reason we fail. I often share these words with the agency. We live by our proposition, we win, we don't, and we fail. We all know that life can be chaotic and at times all-consuming, particularly recently. For everyone, no exceptions. Therefore, to simplify, to really simplify to the extreme, what we need to do to achieve success becomes extremely useful. To have a constant point of reference that we can pull back to allows us to make decisions quickly and with confidence, despite the unpredictability. When asked about my role at Journey Further and what I do, I always think I've got 2 options in response to that question. Option 1, which is really the functional MD response. My explanation is I oversee all day-to-day operations of the agency, from client operations to HR. But I think the second, more interesting, and I would argue more accurate definition of what I do is that it's my role to ensure that every decision that I and the agency makes is run through the filter of Clarity at Speed. Is what we're doing open, immediate, pioneering, and together? If it is, let's do it. If it's not, let's run for the hills. Clarity at speed simplifies my role and what we do. If everyone questions their role from this perspective and acts accordingly, we'll win. If we don't, we'll fail. Simple, right? Well, yes and no. It's a simple articulation, but quite rightly a challenge to deliver against each and every day. Clarity at speed, it's the past, it's the present, and it's the future. Word of warning before I move on, there's some blatant self-promotion of the agency which will follow, which I guess was going to happen at some point within this presentation. It's the past. Well, from the start, clarity at speed has been the perspective that we've tried to apply to everything we do. A focus on clarity at speed has helped us make, therefore, the following important decisions. The decision to be open. We were the first Northern agency to sign up to ISBA's Data Transparency Code of Conduct. The decision to be immediate. We killed client service from day one and instead gave each and every one of our clients direct access to the most senior analysts, the people who are going to make the biggest difference on their business. We made the decision to be pioneering. We worked hard to cement our relationships with tech pioneers like Google, and as a result became a premium partner within 12 months. And we made the decision to be together. We built properties like the Journey Further Book Club and more recently the Journey Further podcast. Fantastic properties, so that instead of just talking about the importance of learning, we actually ensured that we pulled people together through shared learning. These important tenets of our business simply wouldn't have happened if we hadn't first and foremost focused on our desire to deliver clarity at speed. So it's the past, but it's also the present. Without a focus on delivering clarity at speed, I don't believe the following would have happened recently. We were listed in Campaign's top 100 agencies to work for, most importantly, as voted by our employees. And we were also listed as Adweek's fastest growing agency in Europe. These things simply wouldn't have happened without a focus on clarity at speed. Obvious, I know, but without clarity at speed, events like today wouldn't happen. And what I think is fantastic about an event like today, it's not just an expression of clarity at speed, but through the presentations, the discussions, and the subsequent feedback that we will get, today will help mold clarity at speed for the better, for the future. So clarity at speed, it's the past, it's the present, and as just mentioned, it's the future. The aspirations of the agency continue to grow, but whatever comes next, international expansion, a greater focus on CSR and diversity, clarity at speed will undoubtedly be the filter through which we look at and manage each opportunity. That's it for me. I hope I haven't taken too long, Nath. Thank you for listening. And finally, if anyone has any questions about the opinions that I've shared, any thoughts, any challenges, then please do get back to us. You can email me direct at matt@journeyfurther.com. Thank you, and I really do hope you enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you very much for that, Matt. No, I think a really great expression of the value that can be gained by really sticking to a purpose and acting on it. I have to now press you for your 15-second summary. If you could summarize in 15 seconds what you'd want people to take away from your talk, what would it be?
I think it's simply this. I think in order to be successful, you need to establish 3 core components. A proposition that is deeply rooted in truth, values that link to the proposition and therefore help inform how you should act, and finally, effort and day-to-day management to those values.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Matthew. Thank you.
Thanks. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody. Nath, doing a great job. Enjoy the day.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. And for people just joining, welcome to Clarity at Speed Live. So we've got talks happening all the way throughout the day today, 15 minutes each, all intended to give you some of the most bite-sized and actionable insight into digital startups and workplace culture. And the speaker we have coming up now is very much a champion of that last area, the workplace culture. We have Pip Jameson from The Dots. So Pip is founder and CEO of The Dots, which, if you're not aware, is a community for creative types or no-collar workers, as they call it, who are on a mission to take on LinkedIn, amongst many other things. Pip, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it's amazing to see you, Nathan. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. It's been a while since we last spoke, so it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great. No, it's lovely.
If you're ready, Pip, I'll hand straight over to you.
Fab. All right, I'm just going to share my screen now. So lovely to see you all. I'm literally tuning in from my houseboat, Horace. Usually the Wi-Fi is all right, so we'll see how we go. But yeah, I guess this is all about, starting and scaling. And I guess my mantra on starting and scaling, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And what I'm going to really cover in this lightning talk is just a bit of a journey of why I started The Dots, but then I guess the most important things that I've learned about starting and scaling a business. So for those of you that don't know, and I founded the business about 4 or 5 years ago here in the UK, but a bit of background. I studied maths and economics at university, but I spent most of my career in the creative industries. And The Dots is actually my second startup. I started my first startup in Australia called The Loop. Couple of fun facts. I'm tuning in from my houseboat, Horace, where I actually started the business. And I'm also dyslexic. And the reason I mention this in talks is sometimes I muddle words, so huge apologies. But fun fact for anyone that's dyslexic who's tuning in, 35% of entrepreneurs are dyslexic and 40% of self-made millionaires. So congratulations, it's a superpower. So yeah, just a little bit of a background of why I started the platform. So I'm a non-tech founder. So I didn't study computer science at university. I just kind of saw a real world problem and maybe somewhat naively wanted to create a solution. Really what I recognized is, I guess the world of work has changed forever. Flexible working is here to stay. There's the rise of freelance and the gig economy. And I guess, the only real professional network or professional network at scale that existed before The Dots was LinkedIn, which for me is just built around a very corporate, linear, old way of working. So I wanted to create a different solution. But on a deeper level, what I realized is that, people wanted different things in their career. They actually wanted to love the jobs they do, wanted to work with people they valued, and actually wanted purpose and a meaning in their career. So yeah, I started a different version of professional networking that's, I guess, geared to that future workforce. So for those that don't know The Dots, Apple called us networking for the modern world. The way we support our communities, we help them connect with like-minded people. We help them promote themselves. But instead of promoting yourself via a CV, people post projects and then credit the full team around those projects. So for example, a project could be an app and you credit the front-end developer, the back-end developer, the head of growth, etc. But I guess the core values we bring to our community is helping them learn the skills of the future, helping them find flexible work and collaborate. As I said, I started the business here on my houseboat, and we've grown to over 600,000 members now, and we work with around 10,000 companies that use us to hire talent. But I guess at the heart of everything I've created is trying to create an antithesis to the existing social media sites that exist today. I hate how, Facebook, Twitter have become just places of fake news and negativity. So big differences between us is our algorithm is actually based on positivity. So the kinder you are on The Dots, the higher you come up in search results. And we also do a lot of work around diversity. So I love men, by the way, but 68% of our community are female, 31% BAME, 16% LGBT, and we do a lot of work around neurodiversity and socioeconomic movement as well. But it's not been an easy journey for me. You know, I've had to literally learn everything from scratch. You know, as I said, I don't have a computer science degree. And I think this is a good summary of like the journey I've been through from starting and scaling a business. So this is my happy, sad graph. Everything at the top is when I'm on cloud 9. Oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever done. We're going to take over the world and we're going to be the next LinkedIn. Everything on the bottom is, oh my gosh, what have I done? I am so out of my depth. I'm crying on my husband's shoulder. Interestingly, from an outside perspective, you know, it looks like it's been a really easy journey for us. You know, we got product market fit quite early on. We've got a working business model. We've, you know, over 600,000 members. So, you know, from an outsider's perspective, it looks like it's a lovely, happy journey. The reality of what I've been through, and every startup has been through, whether they admit it or not, is actually this. So this is my insane roller coaster ride. I mean, I have never been so happy in my entire life, and I have never been so out of my depth in my entire life. Now, I won't go through all the highs and lows, but I guess a key takeout for me with all of this has been, you know, perseverance has been key to this journey. And as I mentioned, this is my second business. I started my first startup in Australia. So you see that really low area, the split area. I went through probably one of the hardest thing a founder could ever go through, as I had a split with my first co-founder in Australia and had to start again from scratch over here. So I've gone from startup to scale up, back to startup to scale up again. And it's been one hell of a journey, and I've learned so much along the way. So yeah, as I just said, I started the dots here on Horace, my houseboat, and here are my kind of core or lightning speed learnings. The first, I guess, and most important thing is anyone who scales a business goes through really tough times. And the key to weathering those tough times is being persevering through those tough times. You have to find deep wells of resilience to get through starting and scaling a business. And I guess the way I've found deep wells of resilience is I've managed to combine what they call, it's a Japanese philosophy, it's like ikigai, sorry, that's my dyslexia, I have no idea how to pronounce it. But what I've been lucky to combine is doing what I truly love doing with what I'm good at. With what I get paid for, because we all need to eat, but most importantly, what the world needs, and the purpose and the mission behind the dots, helping democratize talent, helping companies connect with diverse talent, and also building a positive and inclusive social network is what drives me every day. And it means that when the hard times come, that purpose has pushed me through to get through those hard times and not give up. And I would highly recommend, if you can build social purpose into your business, it makes those hard times so much better. I guess the other thing that I've learned is, you know, tech is fundamentally important when you're scaling a tech business, and so is the product. But it's the people and the communities we serve that are the most important thing. As founders, we need to obsess about them more than anything else, and then ensure we're building a product and the tech solutions that are around real world problems. And as I said, social problems are the ones that we all have a responsibility, especially in this day and age, to help solve. Another fundamental learning, and I mentor quite a few founders, I find that when people start businesses, they jump straight to marketing before product market fit. And I think the most important thing to get right is product market fit before even thinking about marketing, and especially before spending any money on marketing. Feedback from my community has been the most invaluable thing I've ever had. You know, we are constantly communicating with our community about advice from how can we improve the platform, which countries to launch in, and I'm always doing posts on the dots to get that feedback. And if you're looking for product market fit, there's actually a brilliant survey that you can do to your members, which was done by the crew at Superhuman. Just Google Superhuman product market fit survey, and it's a really good way to gauge if you are at product market fit yet. If you're not, all your time should be spent on getting to product market fit. If you are, that's the moment that you can start marketing and scaling your business. The other really important thing that I've like, I guess is probably one of the reasons I'm in business, is I have surrounded myself with the most incredible mentors. And I used to think that I could have like one mentor that was going to solve all of my problems, but I came to realize that actually there's no one is good at everything. And if you want a market specialist, they might be great at tech, but they're not going to be good at raising investment or as good as someone who could advise on raising investment. So now what I have, I guess, is a huge portfolio of mentors that specialize in different areas that I'm struggling with. So whether that's growth or marketing or branding or tech. And then I call on those mentors when I'm having challenges. And I might tap to them like 5 times in 1 week when I'm having problems, and then leave them in peace for the rest of the time. And I would highly recommend a portfolio approach to mentorship. Top tip for any female entrepreneurs that are listening as well. I found it incredibly hard to get female mentors, even though I was desperate to, because the reality is there just aren't enough women in senior ranks in tech. It is changing, thank goodness, but there aren't. So top tip for women tuning in: if you want the best in the business when it comes to mentors, I'd highly advise going after senior men in tech, but the ones with daughters, because they're the ones that want to see change. The other obviously important thing I've learned along the way is, you know, scaling a business is all about the team you put around you. You can't be good at everything. And the most important thing when it comes to hiring team members is, firstly, hire positive people that focus on solutions, not problems. When you're scaling, the last thing you need is people moaning or politics coming into your business. So focusing on hiring people that find solutions, not problems, will really help in the long haul. It also, you know, means that you'll end up with a really positive working environment, which will make coming to work each day a pure joy. I guess the other hugely important thing is never hire people like yourself. You already exist. And we tend to try and hire for culture fit, or we tend to hire people in our own image. That is the opposite of what you should do. And to that point, diversity is the key to innovation. It's been proven to be better for profitability, better for creativity, better for innovation. You want lots and lots of different people in your business that challenge each other positively, so you can build products for everyone, not just yourself. With that in mind, I guess, you know, you can't be good at everything, but you are going to have to learn a lot. So, you know, I have had to cultivate an insatiable appetite to learn. I read probably a business book a week. I'm dyslexic, so reading is quite challenging. So I listen to audiobooks, but here are some of my favorites. The other really important thing I've learned along the way is I have seen so many businesses fail, not because they didn't have a brilliant idea or a brilliant team, but they didn't have the right support at home. And the last thing you need when you're scaling a business are friends or family or your partner nagging you to stop working or not giving it your all, or saying, why don't you just give up? So this is a picture of my husband. And it's been as important getting my husband on this journey as it has been my team and my investors, because I need someone at home that's got my back and said, you got this. And then to close, I guess I'm going to lean on this amazing man, Seth Godin, who is doing a talk today, which I'm so excited about. But I guess Seth, in one of his videos, says like starting and scaling a business is a bit like those children's balloons, you know, those really long ones that you're puffing and puffing and it's really hard to blow up. But what happens is suddenly it inflates more and it gets easier and easier. And that's what I've learned along the way. It is bloody hard, but the more you learn, the more you surround yourself with brilliant people, the easier it is along the way. So that's me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Pip. Yeah, there's tons of stuff for people to take away there. I love how open and honest you are about the progress you guys have made, the challenges which you faced, and I love that roller coaster that you showed. The reality for anyone in any kind of walk of life or business, I think. So, Pip, just before you go, I have to press you for the 15-second summary. If you could summarize the key takeaway from your talk today in 15 seconds, what would it be?
I would say, if you can, create businesses with social purpose, because that will help you through the hard times. And team is everything, and diversity matters.
Thanks very much, Pip. I completely agree. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
and I have the fortunate job of looking after an ever-growing community of business owners, founders, CEOs, and marketers who, despite their busy lifestyles, want to keep on learning whilst they go. And that community is the Journey Further Book Club. And amongst hosting meetups and discussing industry news and development tactics, perhaps most excitingly, we also share exclusive conversations with authors and people who are making a difference to the world around them. So today I am delighted to be joined by the award-winning CEO and founder of Starling Bank and author Anne Bowden to talk about her brand new book, Banking on It. Hello, Anne, and welcome.
Hello, Isabel. Lovely to be here. Really looking forward to talking.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us. I loved Banking on It, and I found it to be a really refreshing read on what it means to be a CEO and founder and all of the highs and lows that entails. But not only that, to hear how you've had such a huge impact on the banking industry. So the book is subtitled How I Disrupted an Industry, and I'm super excited to talk about that. But first of all, I know you're a book lover, and I can see that you've got your own book on the shelves behind you. How does that feel?
Absolutely fantastic. Really, really proud to have a book out there. It's and it's great to be able to talk about it because, you know, writing a book means all these things have been going around in your head, things you feel about your business or how you want to go about sort of changing things. It's crystallized in a book, and having it behind you on a shelf is fantastic.
Yeah, I can imagine, and a little bit surreal at the same time. So both you and Starling seem to be gaining more and more accolades as the days go by. I think you just really recently got awarded the title of FinTech of the Year. And, you know, kind of before creating Starling, you'd already achieved a great deal in your career in traditional banks. Could you tell us just a few of the things that you learned in your 30-year experience of working at big banks like RBS and AIB that prompted you to start out with something new and to disrupt the banking industry?
And probably it's because I knew too much that I decided that I should quit and start a new bank. I had a long career in banking. I started as a computer scientist in Lloyds Bank in the early 80s, and I worked all around the world, from Lloyds Bank to Standard Chartered Bank to UBS in Zurich, to ABN AMRO in Amsterdam, and RBS to Allied Irish Banks. And I came to the conclusion that banking wasn't changing. It was looking backwards rather than looking forwards. And technology had changed the way people were shopping, people were buying music, and the banking industry hadn't embraced that. And I started dreaming about starting a new bank, one that had all the new technology, a new way of embracing customers. And it was a dream. And one day I quit my job to turn the dream into reality.
Just a small dream then, starting a new bank.
Yeah.
And I love how in the book you refer to it as Project New Bank. Obviously, there's a lot of fear that's involved when starting a new project, and obviously one as big as that. How did you overcome that fear and actually start what has become Starling?
Well, I started every day, getting up in the morning and thinking, well, somebody should start a new bank. Somebody should do something different. I never thought it would be me. I thought that why would it be me that started that bank? Would it be somebody else? And one day I came to the conclusion that what I was fearing was that I'd look silly. I'd be a fool. You know, people would think that is a silly idea to do something audacious. But I came to the conclusion that if I start something really, really audacious that's never been done before, if I fail, it wouldn't be failure at all. And that would have spurred me on. And in January 2014, I quit my job to start a new bank.
And you did it, and we're now here. And I'm interested just to go back to obviously just that time starting new bank. And you talked a lot about how you had success when you start to think like a startup, and obviously there were confinements on that and restrictions because you were working for a big business. So for anyone who's listening who does work within a big business, can you explain what it means to think like a startup and how, even if there are restrictions on you, how you might be able to implement that in your day-to-day?
I think the problem is that when we're in a big corporate, we have lots of people pointing out the problems, lots of people pointing out the detail, and somehow we just know too much. So it's what we tried to do is solve all the problems at once. We tried to make a list of all the things that need to be done, do a long plan, and come up with something that's just too long, too complicated, and you never reach the end of it. Thinking like a startup is figuring out what you can do this week. What can you do this week? And you can have lots of naysayers saying, no, that can't be done. 6 months down the line, you're going to have this problem. A year later, the customers are not going to like this. All those things stop you from doing the first step. And in a corporate, in every big organization, you have to train the organization to be agile, to do things in a different way, and start to have your confidence back. Organizations have lost their confidence to do difficult things, and it's getting the confidence back in the organization, taking step by step, and being terribly convincing. Big organizations can change as well, and it's all about each individual standing up and saying, we can do that.
Absolutely. And why do you think big business have lost confidence?
I think the organization has structured things too much, taken the individual motivation out of the processes and the will to do something, and replaced them with process and procedures. Now, every time we make a mistake, we put in place a process or a procedure or a risk management thing to actually control making that mistake again. And that's good. You need to do that. But the problem is that these processes have swamped creativity and swamped people from taking that first step or actually pushing to the next step of development and innovation. It's in all of us to be creative, to build businesses within our businesses. You can do that as well. You don't have to be an entrepreneur to do it. And I hope some of that comes through in the book.
Absolutely. So, of course, you explain your story of starting a new business and growing it up, and that will never be smooth sailing. And you do talk very openly about kind of the heartbreaks and the pitfalls that you experienced during setting up Starling, as well as the highs. Why was it important for you to share that story now?
Well, Starling is soon to be profitable. We've now got nearly 2 million customers. 4 billion of deposits, 1.5 billion of lending. So, yeah, we're coming to the start of a new phase of our development as a profitable business. And I really, really get so much inspiration from reading books. I love reading, sort of other people's stories of their businesses and the tough times. And it supported me through the journey. I'd read Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and there'd be chapters in there I'd read time and time again when I needed the motivation to go to the next stage. And I wanted to do my bit in putting down my stories of my journey to help others on the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we say, it's now on the bookshelf behind you with many other classics. Are there any particular entrepreneurs' books that you come back to time and time again?
Yeah, I think I just mentioned but I think that I read an awful lot of sort of the business biographies because I think those are the things that inspire me. Recently I read Shoe Dog.
Yes,
which is great, which is a really, really great story. And yeah, I'm constantly reading, and I love the chance of learning from other people's ideas.
Absolutely, and that's something we feel very passionately about, and that's why the book club exists. So, obviously, as we said, the book is subtitled "How I Disrupted an Industry." And that idea of disruption is one, it plays into the idea of thinking like a startup. If you were to now in 2020 refocus where you were looking to disrupt, what industry would you now be focusing on?
I think medtech is and biotech is very, very interesting. But that's not the industry that I work in. That's, I spent my career in financial services technology and that sort of business, data businesses. I'm very, very interested in machine learning and artificial intelligence. I think there's huge opportunities for the world in biotech and medtech. I am really, I'm looking forward to a world where we'll eventually get to grips with robotics. I think we're at the start of a wonderful period when there's lots of things going on out there that we can benefit from as human beings.
Absolutely. And obviously talking about 2020 and the future ahead of us, it has been, an incredibly unusual year. And you've written a really beautiful kind of epilogue to the book about what life's been like at Starling since the pandemic started. And I wondered if you could just share a few of the kind of key moments for you over the last 6 months of running a bank in a global pandemic.
Yeah, it was. We never expected this, did we? We never expected for society to change so dramatically. But Starling was built for the cloud. Starling was built to operate in this very new, innovative way, and therefore we transitioned to working remotely very easily, and we were very, very quick to listen to what customers were saying and launch new products. We launched a connected card for people that are self-isolating, and we're one of the only 2 products recommended by NHS volunteers. We launched a product to scan checks so people didn't have to go and post checks. So we really started listening, and we also helped small businesses with bounce back loans. The government announced their lending scheme, and we very, very quickly engaged in that. And we've now done a 1.1 billion of bounce back loans helping small businesses. So we've been very busy, and not a single person has been furloughed. And we working very, very carefully together, supporting people at home. We have a program called Never Home Alone. Mm-hmm. And every day we engage with people in different ways, whether it's learning to listen, learning to share, learning to manage our own mental health. So we have lots of speakers and lots of engagement, so people are never home alone.
And I love that. What an amazing name for an initiative. And obviously loneliness is something that is a real problem for people right now. On kind of your point about no one in your company being furloughed, you do mention that the press kind of jumped on this idea that you were going to furlough some of your staff, and I just wondered what you would like to say to anyone kind of who reads the mainstream press. As a business owner on the receiving end of some of those things, what would you like people to remember when they're reading these headlines?
I think lots of headlines are good and well researched. But lots of headlines could be just wrong. Mm-hmm. But I believe in journalism. I believe that journalism has a great part to play in ensuring that people in positions are held to account. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you have to be thick-skinned as an entrepreneur, because you can overreact. You can have a headline which is perhaps unfair. But you can't have the good press without the bad press as well. And, that's how the world works. So being an entrepreneur and having successful stories, having the stories that say that you're doing really well, one day you're going to have the negative press as well. And that's that comes with being successful.
So you just gotta roll with it, I guess.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we are almost at the end of our time talking together. I would love to talk to you about your book recommendations for hours and hours, so we'll have to arrange that separately. But if you could summarize in 15 seconds what it is that you want anyone who's picking up Bank It On It to take it away with them, what would that be?
Yeah, I think that the Observer called it a banking blockbuster. And some people have talked about it as being part memoir, part business book, and part thriller. And that really encapsulates it all, really. What you have is starting a business, being an entrepreneur, is a roller coaster, and you have to enjoy it. And everybody has the opportunity to do something interesting in their career, whether as a corporate or whether as an entrepreneur. Have a go. You may change the world.
That is amazing. Thank you so much, Anne. And for anyone who hasn't already, do pick up a copy of Banking on It. We will be sharing our kind of summary of it in the book club. So sign up to the book club in the comments. And thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you. See you later.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Clarity at Speed Live. We've got a great selection of talks running all the way throughout the day, so do stay tuned. But coming up now, and I'm really excited for this one, we have Bruce Daisley. Hello, Bruce. How are you doing?
Good morning. Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Just to give Bruce a very brief introduction, then I'll hand over. Bruce was formerly VP EMEA at Twitter, but in the past year or two, he's become more known for his fascination about the workplace and making work better. You might recognize his best-selling book, The Joy of Work, or you might have heard his podcast, Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat, all about that mission of making work better. And yeah, I'm super excited to hear what you've got to say today, Bruce, on the myth of resilience.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invitation to come here. It's obviously a strange year that we've gone through this year. And a lot of people have, as a consequence of that, they've sort of scratched their head and tried to work out what will come next and how will work evolve and how will it adapt. I think one of the interesting things for me is that probably we've witnessed as much change this year as anyone would have anticipated for the rest of our working lives. A lot of organizations might have sat there at the start of February and fetishized how tech firms work. They might have thought, okay, I'm intrigued what tech firms can do. And yet most of them found themselves catching up and really doing the equivalent of what the most advanced tech firms did by the end of March. So it's just firstly, it's an interesting reminder that as much as we might think that we are behind other organizations, actually we're able to bridge that gap far quicker than we realize. And I've found myself, I do a weekly newsletter that sort of looks at these changes, looks at the way we're evolving. It seems that if we look at the statistics right now, the vast majority of British workers feel that they want to work 2 days a week at home. Raises a really interesting question about what work will look like and how we're going to create a new version of work. Because one of the things that we can definitely do is look at the companies that maybe have done these things before and found what went wrong. And when we look at them, there seems to be some pretty big pointers. So I've become fascinated with some of the organizations who maybe have experimented with remote work before and have got lessons to tell us. Some of those firms really are sort of the second wave of internet companies. So companies that maybe were competing with Google, Facebook, big firms, Salesforce, and they found that they couldn't necessarily compete with perks and benefits. So they started differentiating in other ways. And these might be firms like Basecamp. There might be firms like Automatic. They're the company that makes WordPress. And what they learned very quickly is that they allowed their workers to be fully self-determining, to work from home, work remotely whenever they wanted. But what they discovered very quickly was that the office has a network effect to it. The reason why the office had some real strength to it is because we knew that the big boss was there. We knew that the head of marketing was there. The research person was there. We knew that we could talk to all of those people in a 10, 15-minute window. And what these remote firms discovered was that they had these glorious offices. If you can imagine the sort of like the Apple store, this beautiful place, beautifully appointed. And yet what people discovered was they would go into that office and, robbed of the network effect, the office didn't have its benefit. So the average commute in the UK is around an hour. If you've made an hour's journey into the office and then you discover that you're on video calls with people who are back at home, next time you're going to make the journey, you think to yourself, well, was that worthwhile? Was it worth the cost? Was it worth the stress? Was it worth the unproductivity of being in traffic? And so you ask yourself that question next time you decide not to do it. I think this is one of the reasons why we're going to emerge into a different form of work. If we do go to this situation where the norm is people working from home a couple of days a week, we are going to go into a situation where there's probably a degree of different codes. And so Rory Sutherland, who I know has spoken at Jenny Feather events before, but Rory Sutherland talks about people becoming twats working Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. It's an acronym, forgive me. And so you might have a code where maybe you've got some salespeople in your organization and they might be working Monday, Friday, MFs and twats. And this will be the new world that we're living in. And trying to create a code, because we know then that these people will be in on certain days. Why? Then we can take advantage of that network effect. We can take advantage of the coming together and connecting with people. I've been really intrigued, though, with one of the debates that's taken hold in the midst of all of this about resilience. And resilience is this strange concept where we often talk about resilience, and often resilience is what we invoke in others rather than necessarily demand of ourselves. So I found myself on a radio interview with Robert Peston about a month ago. And Robert Peston did what is very much a common use of the word. He said, young people, they need to be more resilient right now. In fact, I saw something written in the Sunday Times. It was written by the person who's responsible, the editor of the Times Educational Supplement. And this person, they were writing a guide to universities for next year. And they said, Generation Snowflake needs to learn how to be more resilient. And this is often how we see the term. We see the term described to some extent, labeling a weakness in others and suggesting that somehow they need to be hardier. So I found myself really intrigued with this. Firstly, is there a strength of response that some people exhibit that others don't? Is there sort of a more robust response that maybe we might witness? And what are the ingredients of it? And I found myself really intrigued in delving into some of the research on it. And what you discover is there's no shortage of research into resilience. In fact, it's a developing area because there's so much intrigue and so much it's sort of curiosity about what might characterize this resilient response. People are very interested in exploring it. And what you discover is that resilience in many ways shares characteristics with other things. To me, resilience and demanding resilience of people has got one interesting parallel. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, if you've ever found yourself in a situation of distress or anxiety and someone comes in and they notice how you're feeling and they ask you to calm down. Did that ever work? Someone said to me last week, never in the history of calming down has someone calmed down by being asked to calm down. I thought that was a good outline, because never in the history of being resilient has someone been resilient by being asked to be resilient. So I found myself really intrigued. What are the secret ingredients of resilience? What are the ways that any of us can respond in a more sturdy way? And what you discover is that there's a myth of resilience. And the myth of resilience is that in any way, this is a character trait or this is a behavior. What you discover, resilience is a process, and it's a dynamic process that develops over time. But generally, it comes as a collective, not an individual response to something. So I found myself looking into these things. And what you discover is these three critical components to resilience. A lot of this work goes back to work by scientists and researchers in the 1980s. But what you discover is these three critical components. First one is control. The second one is identity. And the third one is community. And to just go through each of those in turn, what we discover is that we can never exhibit a resilient response when we feel helpless. You might witness this. I had the fortune, good or bad, to be in Lebanon this summer when the biggest city explosion, the biggest urban explosion in history took place. Unbelievable event. We were about 3 miles away. The ground shook like sort of a 5 or 6 earthquake. I mean, the whole building shook, and then our windows blew out and all of the air in the apartment that we were in sucked out. I mean, it was like end of days. It was impossible to witness what happened and not think something really, really bad had happened. So while our first instinct was we're in the midst of an earthquake, very quickly we realized something else was going on. But the BBC the next day was pretty characteristic of the coverage that Lebanon often gets and Beirut often gets. The BBC said the Lebanese are resilient people. And I was really intrigued with that, because quite often we see people who are the victims of circumstance, and we either project resilience onto them or we have an expectation that they will respond in a resilient way. But it was a really interesting contrast for me, because the next day I saw someone in the Lebanese news saying, stuff resilience, we're fed up with being resilient, we just want justice. And I thought it was an intriguing thing that quite often we find ourselves witnessing this. And back to my point, one of the things we observe is for a resilient response, we need to demonstrate that we've got control over our circumstances. We see this in countless examples. Science is littered with horrific experiments on animals, but one of these experiments was that a group of scientists they immobilized rats and put them in water. So they immobilized them, injecting them with Botox, and they put them in water, but they gave half of the rats the ability to chew. So barbaric experiment. I'm really sorry for even referencing it. But what you discover is the rats who could chew, the rats who had some degree of agency over themselves, had significantly less stress and responded far better to their circumstance. And we see this time and time again. When we look at nurses who work relentless hours and long hours, the ones who feel that they're in control of their circumstance have significantly lower burnout and respond much better to stress. So being in a situation where we feel we have some agency and some autonomy is a really critical component of a resilient response. And I mentioned two other parts: identity and community. We see vast evidence of the impact that identity has on the story that we tell about ourselves and the way that we respond to circumstances. There's a really interesting social experiment that happened in about 10, 15 years ago, which was called the BBC prison experiment. And it borrowed some of the lessons from what you might have heard of the Stanford prison experiment. It took a group of civilians, normal people, turned half of them into guards and half of them into prisons. Into prisoners. And very quickly, what they established was that the way that people identified themselves and the way that they had pride in their own situation had a big bearing on their response to things. Over time, the guards became less and less proud of the role that they were having and the rules they were having to impose upon others. The prisoners became increasingly proud. And the way that we saw this expressed is the prisoners developed, their well-being went up, their stress levels went down, and they became increasingly happy. And the inverse happened with the guards. Their stress levels went through the roof. They weren't happy with the group they were associated with. And over time, actually, a few of them broke ranks and started hanging around with the prisoners. Identity and the sense of belonging is a really critical part of a resilient response. And we see strong evidence of it. And I think that links into the final part of a resilient response, understanding how we can respond in a more hardy way. And that's the idea of community. I was researching one leading person who looks into this, and he talked about the importance of church. And he said, all of the evidence suggests that the positive benefit that people get from going to church is nothing to do with faith and everything to do with community. When we feel connected to people around us, it seems to have a much stronger response, and it puts us in a much better position. And we see some fascinating evidence for this. People who have serious injuries or strokes or pain, the more groups that they are affiliated to after their medical mishap, the quicker they respond. People who feel connected to other people seem to react in a very different way. And I think that's very relevant to the way we're feeling now. A lot of us might be sitting there mourning the lack of daylight. Can't believe the fact that it seems before when we look up from our computers, 4 o'clock and it's pitch black outside. And that sense of isolation is one of the critical things that I think is making this experience especially bad. The BBC yesterday reported that levels of loneliness have gone up by 60% since the start of lockdown. A lot of people are feeling isolated. So if we're trying to think of a response that is resilient, then thinking of how we can access that community seems really helpful. I did something on my podcast where I chatted to, across 4 episodes, 4 leading experts who tried to understand how organizations can build community amongst their workers. So I'm out of time, a really brief opportunity to talk about these things. But for me, this is a really critical lesson. As any of us are thinking about resilience and how we can improve a resilient response, we need to stop thinking that resilience is something that we demand of other people and start thinking of the levers that we've got to activate it. Important levers like control, community, and identity. And I think if we focus on those things, we can actually strengthen our own collective resilience rather than demand it of others.
Thank you so much for that, Bruce. I found that really, really interesting. And as you say, in these most difficult of times, it's important to recognize it's not simply a case of gritting our teeth and buckling down. There's so many factors at play here. I'm sure I can see people in the chat found that really, really interesting. Just before we finish, Bruce, I have to ask you for your 15-second summary. If you could summarize what you've been speaking about today in just 15 seconds for people to take away, how would you do that?
The myth of resilience is that in some way it's this individual character trait that some of us have got and some of us haven't got. Resilience is a collective response that we need to think about how, as a group, we can be collectively stronger.
Thank you, Bruce. And yeah, thank you once again for that. I think that's fascinating. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, if there's any questions, happily take any questions on LinkedIn, or if people get a hold of me via my website, Eat, Sleep, Work, Repeat. But, very willing to answer any questions there, but I know time is short.
Cheers, Bruce. So everyone, we have one more talk left for the morning session. Coming up at 11:30, pardon me, is Tessa Clark, who is the co-founder and CEO of Olio, which is the #1 food sharing app. They're on a mission to tackle food waste, and Tessa will be speaking about living in wasteland. So yeah, we'll be back at 11:30 for that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Clarity at Speed Live. If you're just joining us, we've got an amazing selection of talks happening throughout the afternoon, all intended to give you bite-sized insight into digital startups and workplace culture. We have Seth Godin, Bloom and Wild, and many more coming up this afternoon. But this talk, to finish off our morning session, is one of the ones I've been most excited about. I'm really pleased to introduce Tessa Clark from Olio. She's the co-founder and CEO of Olio, which many of you may have heard of, is the #1 free sharing app. Tessa, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Great to be here.
It's great to have you on. So you're going to be speaking to us today about living in wasteland. I'm very excited to hear what you've got prepared.
I am, and most importantly, how to get out of wasteland.
There we go.
Great, thank you. Well, fantastic to be with you all today. So I'm Tessa. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Olio. Olio is the world's first neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing app. And today I'm going to talk to you about living in wasteland, but as I said, far more importantly, how we can get out of it. So as you are watching this, you might be living somewhere a little bit like this, or perhaps like this, or maybe even like this. But no matter where you are living, you are also unavoidably a citizen of wasteland. Now, what is wasteland? Well, it's a place that exists outside of the bubbles of our day-to-day lives. It's somewhere like this. It's the destruction that takes place to extract the resources so that we can consume. It's the pollution that takes place to manufacture products so that we can consume. And it's the landfill that is the inevitable destination of almost everything we buy so that we can keep consuming. But there's a really, really big problem with all of this consumption. And that is the fact that this consumption has unleashed a three-headed monster of existential crises for humanity. It's unleashed the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, and the resources crisis. Now, unless you've been living under a rock for the past couple of years, you are hopefully well aware of the fact that the climate crisis is taking place. It's here, it's with us now, and it's only getting worse. And we have a very limited period of time to take meaningful action to address it. You're probably also aware of the second crisis, which is the biodiversity crisis. And these headlines point to some of the core issues at play here. But the third crisis, the resource depletion crisis, is perhaps one that you might not be fully familiar with. And that is best exemplified by the concept of Earth Overshoot Day. Earth Overshoot Day is the day in the year in which humanity has used all the resources that the Earth can replenish in a year. It was first measured in 1969. And back then, Earth Overshoot Day was the 31st of December. And so what that means is we consumed in a year what the Earth could replenish in a year. And so humanity was living in equilibrium with the planet. Happy days. Fast forward to this year. Earth Overshoot Day was the 22nd of August. And what that means is that every single thing that every single one of us, 7.5 billion people, rapidly rising to 10, every single thing that every single one of us, 7.5 billion people, are consuming after the 22nd of August is net depletive to the planet. Another way of cutting the data is to say, how many Earths do we need if the whole world's population lived like a typical American or a typical Brit? And you can see we would need 5 and 3 respectively. And collectively, we're living as if we have 1.75 planets, which clearly we do not. And very worryingly, we are on a trajectory to be living as if we have 3 planets by 2030 and 5 planets by 2050. I am sure you will agree that this is quite simply unsustainable. Now, the problem with all of this is that the net effect of our consumption is too often presented to us with charts like this, or perhaps images like this. And they just feel so far away from us and from our daily lives. And the big story that nobody is talking about is the fact that a full 60% of all greenhouse gas emissions come as a direct result of household consumption. That's you and me. That's us. And on the one hand, that's incredibly depressing because all those problems I've outlined with you thus far, that means that we are largely responsible for that. But if you flip it on its head, it can be incredibly exciting because it means that we don't have to wait for governments and for businesses that are moving far too slowly in this area. We, the people, can start to take action. Because after all, it was billions of small actions that got us into this mess in the first place. So surely, by the same logic, billions of small actions can get us out of it. But you might be sitting here thinking, where on earth do I start? This just all feels too big to try and grapple with. Well, the first thing that I really encourage you to do is to completely rethink your relationship with consumption. And I want to introduce to you today a concept which is in the book by the wonderful Bea Johnson called A Zero Waste Home. And she talks about the 5 R's of consumption. And at the very top is refuse. Before you realize it, we are sort of overwhelmed with people offering to give us stuff that we don't want or we don't need. It happens the whole time. And what you've got to do is to learn to ever so politely refuse and say no thank you. The next R in reinventing your consumption is about reducing your consumption. We have all been persuaded over the past couple of decades that we need to consume. We need to buy more. And actually what we're discovering is that that is not the route to happiness, and it most certainly isn't sustainable. So we all need to try and reduce our consumption. The next level down is about reuse. Let's look into our local communities, see what already exists, look into our homes, see what already exists, and try and reuse what we already have before we buy something brand new. And then next is recycle. Now, often, a lot of us think that if we're recycling, it's good, and it absolutely is good. But unfortunately, by the time you take into consideration all of the energy and resources that goes into recycling, it is marginally better than landfill. And so recycle is right down towards the bottom of this hierarchy. It's a simple fact. We are not going to be able to recycle our way out of this mess. And then at the very bottom is rot. Whenever you have bought something, try and ensure that it's made of organic matters that can then return naturally to the earth at the end of their life. A second concept that I want to introduce you to is every time you spend £1, I want you to think of it as a vote. You can either vote for the status quo, or you can spend your money differently and you can vote for a new world, a world that is less wasteful. And so let's now do a bit of a deep dive into one sort of particular area of our lives, which is food, and have a quick conversation about how we can stop wasting so much food. So looking at the global picture, globally, 1/3 of all the food we produce each year gets thrown away. But what's really shocking about this is the fact that half of all food waste in a country such as the UK takes place in the home. That's because the average British family is throwing away roughly 20% of their weekly shop, which is worth £700 sterling per family per year, and collectively adds up to £14 billion of perfectly good money, of economic value going into landfill each. It would be the 3rd largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after the USA and China. And you might or might not have come across the concept of Project Drawdown. Project Drawdown is a piece of global collaborative work by several hundred of the world's leading climate crisis scientists. And they said enough of the doom and gloom about the climate crisis. Let's stack rank the top 100 solutions. And in position number 1 for a 2-degree warmed world is reducing food waste. And notably, that comes above electric cars, above solar power, and above a plant-based diet. So the single most important thing that humanity can do to avert the worst effects of the climate crisis is to reduce food waste. And given that half of all food waste takes place in the home, then that means that each and every one of us have a massive role to play in this. But how can we start? Well, I'd encourage you to think about what I call the 5 S's of reducing food waste in your home. The first is to make sure that you always shop with a list. It might sound very boring, but if you sort of take a day of the week and you plan out your meals for the week and then shop to that list, that is a fantastic first step to reducing your food waste. The second S is ensuring that you store your food properly. There are hundreds of food storage hacks out there, but a few of my favorites are making sure that you keep tomatoes not in the fridge, always keep them on the countertop. Make sure that onions and potatoes are never stored together. And a little hack that I love is that if you put a slice of onion in with an opened avocado, it will prevent it from browning. So storing your food properly can make a massive difference. The next one is about serving sensible portion sizes. And a really, really easy hack here is to reduce the size of your plate. And then next, if you do have leftovers, then save them for lunch or dinner the next day. It is amazing how tasty food can be when it's had an extra day or two to marinate. And finally, if all of those haven't worked and you still find yourself with some spare, then we would really encourage you to use Olio. Olio is the world's first neighbor-to-neighbor food sharing app, and how it works is really simple. You snap a photo, add your food to the app, neighbors living nearby receive an alert, they can browse the listings, request what they want, and pop round and pick it up. What's really amazing is the fact that half of all the food added to the app is requested in less than 24 minutes. So you might be thinking, who on earth would want my head of broccoli or my tins of soup? Please do not worry about that. There is absolutely no shortage of people who are really keen to pop round and pick up your spare food. Olio started as a pilot in North London just over 4 years ago. And in that time, we've since grown to a global movement of 2.5 million people who have together shared over 8 million portions of food. And the environmental impact of that is massive. It's equivalent to taking 20 million car miles off the road. And we have also saved 1 billion litres of water because the production of food is incredibly water intensive. And so to wrap up now, as you start to think about what difference you can make and what role you can play in helping us all move out of wasteland, it can be really daunting and overwhelming. But I'd encourage you to take inspiration from the words of Dr. Jane Goodall, who said that she envisaged the whole world as a jigsaw puzzle. If you look at the whole picture, it is overwhelming and terrifying. But if you work on your little part of the jigsaw and know that people all over the world are working on their little bits, then that's what will give you hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tessa. That was fascinating, and I think that put into such clear perspective what most of us now appreciate is such a serious problem in the world. Could I ask you very quickly before your 15-second summary?
Yeah.
Have you seen much sort of behavior change in the people who use your app since people have been at home a lot more this year and perhaps a bit closer to their community and not traveling as far as they might usually?
Yes, we have, in a word. So Olio has grown more in the past 5 months than we did in the whole previous 5 years. And I think that's because you only need to see a couple of photos of empty supermarket shelves to realize just how important food is. It is literally a life source. And then secondly, because people are in their homes and they're in the local community, they're wanting to connect with people. We've also had our eyes open to the horrific problem of food poverty that we have in all of our communities across the country. And so as a result of that, I think people are really wanting to get involved, connect with their local community, and start to make a difference.
Yeah, interesting. So Tessa, just before we wrap up then, if you could summarize a key takeaway from your talk today in 15 seconds, go for it.
So we are currently unavoidably, undeniably living in wasteland. It's unsustainable. It doesn't have to be that way. For far too long, we, the people, have felt like we're helpless and we have no control over this, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Each and every one of us can make a difference. Billions of small actions got us into this mess. Billions of small actions can absolutely get us out of it.
Tessa, very well said. And yeah, thank you again for joining us on Cloud to Speed Live.
My pleasure. Thank you.
There we have it, everyone. That is the end of the morning session. This stream will end in the next 30 seconds or so, and we'll be going live again in the next 5 minutes on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, just refresh the channel in a few moments' time and you will see part 2 go live. Same happens for LinkedIn. Just go to the Journey Further page on LinkedIn and you'll find us there. Coming up at 12 o'clock, we have Samantha Clark, who will be talking to us about what will you love or leave behind to create more happiness at work. So that's coming up at 12 o'clock. This stream is going to end. There'll be a new stream coming up on LinkedIn and on YouTube in the next few minutes. See you over there.